Hey there. So for these last weeks of distance learning, we're going to be learning about one of my favorite things, money. This is my favorite unit of the course because for most of you, it's probably the most practical real life applications that you're going to see of functions, and it's very relatable. So at the age you are right now, like what, 16, 17 years old, some of you may have jobs. Some of you may have your own bank account. Most of you probably have a debit card, and soon enough, you might even be getting a credit card. Some of you may have money set aside for you by your parents, whether you know it or not. These might be possibly in the form of something called an RESP or any other savings types of accounts. So over the next 10 years of your life, believe it or not, life is going to bring you some of the greatest changes that you're ever going to go through. So think about it. If you're in these next 10 years, you're going to finish high school. You may start and then finish some sort of post-secondary school. You'll likely join the workforce in some capacity. You're likely going to buy or lease your own car, maybe even buy or rent your own house. Some of you may even get married within the next 10 years. And who knows, like me, some of you may even become parents before you turn 27, because I did. No matter where your life takes you over the next part of your life, everything will require you to have and to be able to manage money. And who doesn't want money, right? But whatever your current situation, when you do start making your own money, you want to be as smart as you can about how you spend it and how you save it. Because trust me, learn how to save your money because that way you will maximize and be able to make the most out of it. Okay? So, over the years that I've taught this course and actually this unit, personal finance, to kids that are your age, I learned that background knowledge varies so much with the basic terms that have to do with saving and spending money. So that's why I decided to make this video for you, to introduce you and explain to you some of the important terms that you're going to be hearing about over these next few weeks. Now, some of you may already have some of this background fundamental knowledge, but others of you may not. So in order to get through these lessons, I want you all to be sort of on a level playing ground. All of you need to be at the same place so that as we start to learn more complicated math or when it comes to more financial calculations and understanding, you're all going to have the same background knowledge, okay? So, for example, let's start with just the fact that some of you, believe it or not, actually think that money grows on trees. So guess what? Some of you are actually kind of right. Well, at least used to be right. Money used to be just paper. And paper technically does grow on trees. But what the government used to do, this is actually no longer true, but what the government used to do is they'd take the trees, they turn it into paper, and then they turn that paper into currency. These days now they've upgraded, and money is actually not made out of paper anymore. It's actually made out of plastic, which is why you can run it in the washing machine or dishwasher or whatever, and it doesn't actually ruin. But that's a whole other story. But technically, no, money does not grow on trees. Okay, so what can we do with money besides spend it? We can save it, and like I said, I really want you to learn that saving might be one of the smartest things you can do for yourself. Okay. Um, and what can we do if we don't actually have money, despite how much you try to save it? If you don't have money, but we actually need it, what can we do? We can borrow it. And for things that are big purchases, buying a car, making a down payment on a house, eventually you're going to want to go to post-secondary school. That tuition costs a lot of money. Most of us in real life, we don't actually have like thousands and thousands of dollars laying around. So what we do is we borrow that money. Okay. So we're gonna talk a little bit about borrowing later, but let's start by talking about saving money. Okay, so there's lots of ways that you can save your money. Some of you may already right now have yourself a checking account or a savings bank account. This is the most basic place one person can store their money. It's safe, it's easily accessible, and it allows you to make money that we call interest. It just sits in your account and it earns this magical money called interest. Now, mind you, the interest that a bank account makes is not really a lot. In fact, depending on how much is in your account, it may actually only amount to a few dollars per year. But it's still free money that you made by literally just keeping it in an account. So if you've got money tucked away right now under your bed cushions or your mattress or your pillow, I'm recommending you take it out of there and you go at least open up a bank account. Okay, but we'll talk about that later. Um, Now, before I go on, let's talk about this thing I just used. I use this word called interest. Depending on if you're saving or borrowing money, interest is money that is made on money. Benjamin Franklin actually was one who said, money makes money, and the money that money makes more money. Now, it makes sense if you think about it, because what that means is if you had, say, $1,000 in cash, you should not just tuck it under your mattress. You're better off taking that $1,000 and putting it into an account. If it's a bank that you use, you're essentially giving or lending that $1,000 or your money to the bank. Okay. You're doing them a favor because then what they're going to do is they're going to turn around and take your money and lend it to somebody else, of course, for a fee. Okay. Now, to thank you for lending them your money, the bank is going to pay you back in what we call interest. Okay. So, like, think about if you were at Tim Hortons with a friend and you realize you didn't have your wallet with you. Your friend does you a solid and buys you your lunch saying, just pay me back later. So basically, they lent you, say, 10 bucks. A week later, you meet your friend and you have a couple of options. You can either just pay them back the exact $10, or maybe, because you're a nice and grateful person, you also buy them an ice cap as a thank you. So essentially, you give them a $10 bill and an ice cap. This ice cap is like interest. Okay. So you put your money into an account, but when you go to take it out, there's a little extra in your account that you didn't actually put in there. It just magically showed up. Well, it wasn't just magic, it showed up because it was interest that the bank put in there as a way of saying, thank you for lending us your money. It's like their ice cap. Okay. When investing, you want that rate, that interest rate, to be as high as you can negotiate it to be, because the higher the interest rate you get, the more free money you get into your account. Okay. Now, what are they doing with your money and why do they need you to lend it to them in the first place? So, like I said, it's not money doesn't grow on trees. Banks need to make money themselves. So what they're doing is they're turning around and lending your money to someone else who needs to borrow it for their own reasons. The bank then ends up charging that person interest, and they will often charge more interest to that person than what they are paying you for having put your money into their account. So guess what? That's how they make their money. So do you see how it's essentially like a domino effect and money just kind of getting passed along to whoever really needs it, right? Okay, so let's keep talking about saving money. Now, like I said, you can just put your money into a plain old bank account, savings or checkings, and it will earn you interest, but it earns you minimal interest. Those interest rates are very small. If you want to make more interest, you're better off investing your money into different types of savings and investment opportunities. This is where a bunch of different acronyms come into play. You're going to hear acronyms like GICs, mutual funds, RESPs, RRSPs, TFSAs. Now, those are all a bunch of acronyms that stand for different things like government investment certificate, registered retirement savings plans, registered education saving plans, tax-free savings accounts. These are all those acronyms all have their own meanings, but they all have their own unique benefits depending on how long you want to invest and how flexible you are in terms of when you want that money back. Okay, I'm not going to go into a lot of details about each one of those ones right here. The CEMC Waterloo website actually has a fantastic explanation of those on their site, and I'm eventually going to ask you to read and watch videos about them. But for this unit that we're studying right now or going to study, all you have to know is that if a question I give you says something like, so-and-so invested in a GIC or so-and-so invested in an RRSP, know that they put their money into something, they waited X number of years, and then their money grew to some new amount before they withdrew it. Okay. Now, some key words that you're going to hear me saying, I just used the word withdrew. Withdrawing money means you're taking it back out. Okay. Depositing money means, or investing money means you're putting it in. Okay. Other key words that you're going to hear me using, or you're going to hear in the process of learning, is the word principal. Now, I know you're probably thinking, oh, a principal like Mr. Schouten, the guy who runs our school. That's not the principal. In a financial sense, the word principal means the amount of money that you initially deposit, or the amount of money that you initially borrow. Okay, it's the initial amount of money. Okay, that's principal. Another thing you're going to hear is interest rate per annum. Now, annum is just a fancy word for per year. Okay, interest rate is a rate that's going to be always given to you as a percent, and they always give you an annual or an annum yearly interest rate as a percent. Your job eventually is going to be taking that percent and converting it into a decimal, which you need to do using your old skills that you've learned from, I don't know, grade 6, 7, 8, 9, whatever. Knowing that a percent means out of 100. So, for example, if you had a 9% interest rate, 9 out of 100 is 9%, which you would have to eventually have to convert to 0.09 because you divided 9 by 100. Okay. Anyways, you're going to do that eventually, but you will need to know how to do that. Okay. The other word you're going to hear me using is a maturity date. Maturity does not mean being mature and sophisticated. It means a date that you are officially allowed to take your money back without a penalty. Okay, so you invest your money at a certain amount for, let's say, 5 years. In 5 years, your investment has matured. Now, I said without a penalty because let's say I did invest a certain amount of money for 5 years. That money is essentially locked in to that investment for that 5-year period. But what happens if you have an emergency in like 2 years or 3 years and you need money right away? So you would be able to get your money. It's your money. They can't deny you from taking it back, but they can charge you a penalty fee for breaking sort of the contract that you didn't wait the whole 5 years for maturity. Okay, so maturity date means when you're officially allowed to take back your money without any kind of a penalty. Okay. And the last term that you need to know is the word amount, a future amount or future value. And what that is the total amount that you will have at the end of a fixed period of time. Okay. Now, I said I was going to talk about borrowing really quickly here. Borrowing money, the terms you're going to hear when you're talking about borrowing money are loan, principal, or present value. This is the money that you need today for some reason. Okay, so to buy a car, to buy a house, to pay the tuition, all those examples I gave you earlier. Now, not a lot of us have like $50,000 laying around, okay, but yet you want to buy a $50,000 car, okay, so go ahead. You can buy that $50,000 car if you borrow $50,000. And what happens is you're going to get that car right away. You get the item right away, but then you spend the next X number of years paying it off. Okay. Now, you're going to buy that $50,000 car. You're going to borrow the money. You pay them $500 every month for the next 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, paying it off. At the end of it, you've paid them back the $500,000 you borrowed, but you're also going to pay them a little extra on top of that. Now, listen, no one's going to lend you money for free. I told you this already. Well, maybe your parents, if they really love you a lot and you really wanted to buy a $20,000 car, they might say, here's $20,000 to go buy a car, and I'm not going to charge you interest. But most people, and definitely banks, will not do that for free. That's where interest comes in. Okay, this is when you want that rate to be as low as possible to negotiate, because you're going to have to pay the extra amount back one day. So the lower your interest rate, the less extra money you have to pay them back on top of the original loan. So I should be clear. I do remember there were students of mine in the past that were kind of confused, and so I want to point out that what you're actually paying back, however many years later, is a total amount which includes the principal that you borrowed plus the interest that you were charged, not just the interest. Okay? They're not just going to give you that $50,000 car as a gift and then expect you to just pay that back interest. They want the $50,000 back as well. Okay? So I hope that makes sense, right? So you're basically borrowing $50,000, spending 5 years paying it back, and then in 5 years you say, here's the $50,000 back, plus here's an extra, I don't know. Well, here's the ice cap thing, the ice cap scenario, right? Ice cap scenario. So you give them back the 50,000 5 years from now, but you give them an ice cap. But it's a really big ice cap because that's probably going to be thousands of dollars on top of the 50. Okay, so it's this plus something you pay them back, not just the interest. Okay, so I know there have been students who've been confused about that. That's why I want to clarify. Okay, so I think I've covered everything I wanted to in this intro video. So here's how I'm going to end. Next week, we're going to start by talking about interest and how it can grow, because there's actually two ways that interest can grow, and that's by earning simple interest or by earning compound interest. Then we're going to apply those to investing and borrowing money. And we're going to talk about things specifically called annuities, which can either describe saving or borrowing money. And specifically, we're going to focus on something called mortgages, which is one type of an annuity. And that's basically a fancy word to describe a special type of a loan. And that's one to buy a house. Okay. But next week, because we're starting off simple, we're only going to learn about the two types of interest that you can earn or pay, simple and compound. And I'm not going to tell you which one I think is better. I want you to get your brain starting to think about which one you think is better. So before next week's lessons gets posted on Google Classroom, I'm going to ask you to ponder the following would you rather scenario, and I'm going to post it up on our Google Classroom as a question as soon as I finish posting this video. Okay, so a question's going to pop up. I want you to try and answer it when you get a chance, hopefully before next week's lessons. And don't worry, I'm not going to be marking it, so don't go doing a Google search for a right answer. Just think about what you actually think is a better deal, and then be able to explain why you chose that scenario. Okay, so here goes. Would you rather? Would you rather me? I'm willing to give you right now $1 million. Right now. Here you go. Would you rather take that $1 million right now and run with it? Or option two, would you rather I give you a penny today? Now I know we don't actually make pennies anymore, so humor me for this, but theoretically, I'm going to give you a penny today. I'm going to give you 2 pennies tomorrow. I'm going to give you 4 pennies the next day. I'm going to give you 8 pennies the day after that. Okay, so do you see the pattern going on here? And I'm going to do that for 30 days. Okay, so the scenario is 1 cent the first day, 2 cents the second day, 4 the third, 8 the next, 16, 32, etc., etc. Okay. On the 30th day, all of that money is yours, however much that ends up being. So would you rather take that $1 million right now today and run with it? Or would you take option two, which is the penny each day accumulating until the 30th day? So here's what you're going to do. You're going to stop the video. You're going to go back. You're going to start thinking about it. You are not going to go and do a Google search and find an answer to that question. You're going to think about it. Now, if you take a calculator and you want to bust out some calculations and do whatever you want, you could do that. But I want you to genuinely think about which one of those options would be the better deal and why. Okay? And then you're going to go onto Google Classroom and you are going to answer the question. And then after that, you're going to start learning some lessons. You're going to get some formulas, and we'll go from there. So for now, I'm going to stop the video. Okay, and I'll hopefully see you next week. All right. Good luck. Go ponder the would you rather. Take care, guys. Bye.